Booster 19's time to shine at Pad 2 is finally here, marking a critical step towards Starship's return to launch operations with Flight 12. Ship 39 has also had the kitchen sink being thrown at it over at Massey's, McGregor keeps breaking its own records, and more tower segments have been rolled out at the Cape. From Florida Space Coast to South Texas, we have all of this coming up and more on this week's Starship Update. Let's start things off over at Massey's with Ship 39. Since last week's episode, it has seen a plethora of cryogenic-proof testing on top of the truss structure putting in some work as well. During the first test though, we didn't notice any of the hardware on it moving at all, which was sort of expected with this being the first test ever in this configuration. A couple of days later, Ship 39 underwent its second round of cryogenic-proof testing. But before we continue, we should probably look at how a cryogenic-proof test actually works. Prior to Ship 39, vehicles were placed onto a thrust simulator. Its purpose is to, well, simulate the loads of Raptor engines producing thrust against the aft end of the ship whilst fully fueled with cryogenic propellants. Though for Ship 39, this was different. It was placed atop the static fire stand and was rolled to the flame trench area at Massey's. Now, it's worth noting though that the ship was not outfitted with engines, so we could automatically rule out any sort of static fire testing. But if that's the case, then what's it doing over there? Well, during the second cryo test, we could finally see the brand new truss structure in action, serving its intended purpose. Leading up to the test, a multitude of cables were attached to both sets of Ship 39's flaps, and straps were also connected between both chopstick simulators around the ship. As you can probably guess, the cables and the flaps pull on them and simulate the loads that they will likely see during various phases of re-entry to verify structural integrity and also to verify the motors actuating them as well. Regarding the chopstick simulators and its support strap, we presume that this is to exert loads and overall external pressure onto the ship that will be experienced during a catch and recovery at the tower. But why do all of this now when they already have data from previous flights, and not to mention the fact that they have never conducted this kind of testing here before with actual flight hardware? Looking at documentation filings for eventual ship recoveries of Pad 2, it will have to re-enter and fly over populated areas, so you have to be sure your vehicle will hold together and maintain control at all times during re-entry. And the flaps are exactly what dictates control in the atmosphere as well. Upon making it into the lower atmosphere, the ship will transition into its belly flop maneuver before the flip and burn phase upon landing into the chopsticks. While moving closer to the tower, the sticks will close in around the ship will set weight on the catch pins on the chopsticks, and the engines will shut down. Great success! But to this point, our only reference for chopstick closing speed to this point has been the 3 previous booster catches so far on flights 5, 7, and 8. With Ship, it's likely going to look a bit different as its overall size is much smaller in comparison to super heavy boosters, in addition to having to avoid the aft flaps as well. There are much smaller margins for error here. Furthermore, during flight, the ship undergoes immense external loads through all phases. So testing and validation here is 100% mission critical. We have said it before and we will say it again, folks. Version 3 has to work. Now, coming back to that second cryo test for a second here, all seemed well with Ship 39 being detanked following the test conclusion. Then came the final test. On March 3rd, Ship underwent its third cryogenic proof test. And just like any other old cryo test, there wasn't much to see apart from a coating of ice and vapor, but all seemed to go well. Yep, well, at least for now. On the 6th, a road closure was posted for a Massey's to production site transport, set to start the following night at midnight. Following this was a road delay from the production site to the launch site. But we'll get into that shortly. And after a small delay, Ship 39 was finally disconnected from all of its testing hardware and rolled away from Massey's, starting its rollback to the production site early in the morning on March 8th. Actually, at the exact same time that Booster 19 was rolling out to the launch site. Now, while Ship is rolling back to the production site here for a second, we want to give our friends over at the Rocket Ranch a huge shout out. During the week, Anthony Gomez gave Gage and Caesar a boat ride down the Rio Grande, giving us a fantastic look at the belly side of Ship and the truss structure. The Rocket Ranch outpost also houses a great camera that we used to see over at Massey's. So without Anthony, these views would not be possible. Better yet, you can actually watch a launch from the Rocket Ranch outpost itself. Visit their website linked here to get your launch viewing tickets for a front row seat to the action. And speaking from experience here, I can tell you it's well worth it. Thank you, Gomi. Now, with Ship 39 arriving at the production site, we're unsure of what's next exactly. Either it's going to roll out next with engines for static fire testing, or it'll come out atop a brand new test stand with thrust simulator rams, which the static fire stand currently does not have and is normally a part of testing. We'll have to wait and see. In an interesting chain of events, the S39.1 test tank has been caught moving multiple times this week. Conveniently, it's been rolled about halfway down Massey's way for 2 of Ship 39's cryo tests and then rolled back to the test site after they were complete, but we're unsure why that's happening though. Maybe it's so that they can actually keep working on it while the site's closed, or maybe they want to shield it in the event of an unfortunate demise like what happened with Ship 36. But with the version 3 ship, unfortunately, which none of us want, but who knows. Also at Massey's, the structural testing cage, aka the Super Crusher, has been observed receiving additional testing hardware this week. It's difficult to judge what this is for right now, but we suspect it could have something to do with grid fin testing. A new test tank, possibly using the existing B18.3 forward section, that's yet to be stacked, is expected to be first in line here. Now, remember last week how amped we all were when Ship 39 finally rolled out of Mega Bay 2? You know, because it was a long time coming? Well folks, Pad 2 is finally in the presence of a flight vehicle once again with Booster 19, ahead of its long-awaited static fire test campaign. And as of recording, it's about to be lifted for the first time, and by the time this is published, it may already be on the launch mount. SpaceX has been working non-stop on Booster 19 instead of Mega Bay 1 since the vehicle rolled back from Massey's on February 9th after completing its cryo-proof test campaign. And safe to say that testing had us all on our toes since, well, if you remember Booster 18 sneezing and unzipping itself. Enough said. The first signs of Booster 19's imminent rollout was the abundance of Pad 2 testing performed recently. First, involving multiple purging cycles from the twin BQDs, or booster quick disconnects, in addition to extending and retracting them. Not to mention the full motion cycles of the 20 clamp arms and movement from both the chopsticks and the ship quick disconnect systems. A few days later, a booster transport stand rolled out into the ring yard. But this could have been a tease like last time when they rolled out the transport stand to Pad 2 all alone for comms testing and alignment with the launch tower at the lift station. Fast forward a few hours, and scheduled beach closures were posted on Starbase's website. Closures listed for Monday, March 9th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with backups on Tuesday, March 10th and Wednesday, March 11th with the same time windows. Interesting. Following those postings, we saw a road closure pop up for transport from the production site to the launch site. Now, put 2 and 2 together here, and all signs were pointing towards an imminent rollout of Booster 19. Finally. Now, literally, as I'm recording right now, Booster 19 is in the air and about to be set down on the orbital launch mount at Pad 2 for the first time ever. It's also missing a lot of engines and has very few actually attached to it, which is interesting. But everything that we're seeing now is pointing toward the fact that the booster will have to roll back at least 2 more times now. At least 1 more time to roll back and have all of its engines installed, and then roll back for static fire testing, and then rolling back for FTS install, and then hopefully rolling back out for flight not long after that. I mean, look at this thing, dude. Like, this is incredible. This is the first time we have seen a super heavy booster or even just flight hardware at the pad in like 5 or 6 months. It's been way too long now. Time will of course tell what happens here.
The following 24 hours after being lifted, SpaceX prepared the pad for testing Booster 19. Things got much more visually exciting on Tuesday though. But for more on that, you'll have to subscribe and tune in to next week's Starship Update.
And hopefully they don't find any more trouble with the booster in the meantime between all the tests and rollouts here. That being said though, SpaceX should publicly confirm if testing is complete, so we should be on the lookout for that. After pre-flight testing is complete, we expect SpaceX to roll Booster 19 back to the production site and onto one of the 3 open work stands in Mega Bay 1 to perform any remaining checkouts. These checkouts are expected to look a little bit different from what we have become used to with the last generation of boosters. For example, we will no longer see a hot staging ring rolled from Starfactory to Mega Bay 1, because on version 3 boosters, that structure is already designed structurally into the booster itself, no longer a separate part. With both Flight 12 vehicles now well on their way through testing, SpaceX has been busy stacking those in line next for Flight 13. On the ship side of the equation, Ship 40 has been coming along nicely ahead of its own test campaign in the near future. With 39 over at Massey's, SpaceX wasted no time finishing stacking Ship 40, having received both the aft 3 section and the transfer tubes, which we also covered in last week's episode. Something we didn't cover last week was the ship receiving its last section, as SpaceX hadn't rolled out that immediately after the transfer tubes were installed. On March 2nd though, Ship 40's final barrel section rolled its way into Mega Bay 2 from Starfactory. Once welded in place, the vehicle was fully stacked. Actually 4 days faster than Ship 39 in terms of the PEZ dispenser rolling into Mega Bay 2 and the engine section to close it out. The following day though, SpaceX decided to showcase a real sense of urgency here for vehicle readiness. And by that I mean they lifted both LOX and methane raceways onto the rear center work stand. Now one may wonder, why not just lift it directly onto the ship itself? Well, with this new raceway design and the limited space on the turntable, SpaceX chooses to install it after ship moves toward the rear work stand to allow for an easier installation. And we honestly hadn't expected much more than that to this point. But SpaceX proved us very wrong once again, as later that night, they staged and lifted the first aft flap for the vehicle. And normally, we don't see these this soon in the assembly process. With Ship 39, they installed the aft flaps around 3 weeks after being fully stacked. But it seems SpaceX is showing a real sense of urgency here again, trying to ready the ship for cryo testing. The following morning, they staged and lifted the other aft flap as well. They don't actually have too much room to install them on the current work stand, similar to the twin raceways as of now, so they'll have to wait until the ship is relocated to begin installing those. SpaceX cracked the door open on Mega Bay 2 in the days after, giving us a small peek inside. We got eyes on Ship 40, and SpaceX had indeed moved the ship to that rear work stand. Finally. So what's next for Ship 40 then? Well, as previously mentioned, both of Ship's aft flaps are currently staged. We don't know if they'll go ahead installing those raceways first or the aft flaps to get them out of the way. But either way, they will all find their way onto the ship very soon, which is promising. There is still a ways to go before it's ready for testing though, between other required hardware needing installation and inspection before heading to Massey's. When do you think Ship 40 will head out for cryo testing? Let us know in the comment section down below. Moving away from Flight 13 now, let's go ahead and check in with Starfactory, where the hardware magic for both boosters and ships really happens. Ironically though, not too much has happened in recent times, with the vehicles and hardware currently visible inside, mostly nose cones. But there are always small changes to notice if you pay close attention. Exhibit A. What we think is Ship 45's nose cone has something rather peculiar happening with it, as we noticed recently from our Starbase Live 24/7 cameras. It's received some weird white tiles? They also look to be glued in place, and both patches have different material underneath compared to one another. We're not quite sure why SpaceX chose to install these tiles, or even what's so different about them yet, but they are quite reminiscent of the early shuttle days back when they were using white tiles on the upper section of the orbiter, as opposed to the RSI blankets used later on. We're hoping to more about them from SpaceX sometime soon, maybe during the Flight 12 stream. Now, like with previous ships, they tend to cover the entire nose cone with these tile pins before going ahead with actually tiling the nose cone itself. But this time around, it looks like it's being used as a pathfinder of sorts for the brand new tooling that they're using for the various TPS experiments that they have going on. If not, they'd have to continue with recalibrating the robots until they're up to spec, which can be quite time consuming, as one small mistake can cause a setback and require further inspection on the vehicle and the tooling itself. Besides this mysterious nose cone, the only other activity that we have noticed is on Ship 43, which is currently still in a bare state and has recently been moved from its previous work stand and is now sitting next to Ship 42. Now, this is not the first time they have shifted nose cones around to make room for other hardware or things we can't see, but it's curious nonetheless. We expected to receive tile pins soon and follow a similar pattern to its predecessors, which are currently still covered in scaffolding as they continue to install and finish the TPS, mostly on Ship 42. Good old B18.3's forward section is also visible here as well. We haven't seen much work done here since arriving at the production site following its anomaly at Massey's some time ago, besides SpaceX of course replacing sections of the truss at the top of the tank. It's also worth mentioning that the load spreader and rigging we saw hooked up to this section recently are no longer here. We don't know why that was the case in the first place, but unless we hear or see more from this area, it may remain a mystery forever. Time for our McGregor Minute. SpaceX's premier engine testing facility has been far from quiet this week, both literally and figuratively, with more record high serial number Raptor 3s being spotted, again, and at least 12 Raptor firings throughout the week as well. On February 28th, our cameras located around the site caught a trailer moving around with some unknown parts. To me, it seems like some old Raptor hardware, but it's difficult to guess. A month later, just kidding, it was only 2 days later, Raptor 3 105 was spotted for the second time at McGregor, leaving the stand area that it was stationed at last week. The following day, a total of 7 Raptor 3s were spotted. In order, Raptor 3 SN 122, 123, 1X9, 11X, 108, 114, and 113. The next day also, Raptor 3 121 was also spotted. These record high serial numbers seem to be occurring on a weekly basis now. I've literally been mentioning new record highs for the last 3 weeks in a row now, I think. Absolutely insane pace for Raptor production so far. It might be time to spoil the mood though a bit. The same day that we saw all of that, March 4th, we observed a potential RUD, or Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly, at the Raptor vertical test site. I say potential because it did not look like a happy Raptor as indicated by the green flash, but definitely did not look as energetic as previous RUDs in the past. To close out the week on the 5th, Raptor 3 RVAC SN10X was spotted, and the following day, Raptor 3 SN108 was seen once again. So many Raptors. Now shifting over to the launch site, work is continuing feverishly here, with one almost ready for its launch debut, and the other receiving work to adapt its design like Pad 2 and Florida's Launch Complex 39A. Looking at the main focus of attention at the launch site right now, SpaceX continues to bring Pad 2 to life ahead of pre-flight testing with Booster 19. Some key differences here at Pad 2 start with a newly redesigned twin umbilical BQD setup, or booster quick disconnects. one supplying methane and the other with oxygen for fueling super heavy boosters. Recently, SpaceX has purged both the LOX and the methane sides to ensure that there is no dust, dirt, or any other debris inside them that could cause issues when it comes to loading propellant for testing or launch scenarios. Given the timing of events here though, in tandem with the road and beach closures that we covered earlier, these appear to be signals that Booster 19's static fire campaign is finally upon us. 6 months in the making. But this isn't the only testing that we have observed here though. Staying with the BQDs, full motion cycles of deployment and retraction have been spotted, perhaps simulating launch scenarios for timing, ensuring a safe retraction behind their necessary shielding from 33 Raptor 3 engines at full thrust during liftoff. Or this could also be to simulate lift operations onto the launch mount, which they will need to all extend for in order to secure properly. It's a similar story with the launch rings inner clamps as well. There are 20 in total, which are expected to support the full weight of a fully fueled Starship stack, more than 5,500 tons in mass, and more as the program continues. Not only are they expected to hold the weight of a version 3, but version 4 vehicles as well down the line as technology and capability increases. On the launch tower itself, let's go ahead and take a look at the chopstick system. In the last week, SpaceX has been testing them thoroughly, ensuring that everything is ready to support the first ever lift of a booster. Moving up and down, this could be for simulating the booster lift itself of sorts, or even relating to that of a ship itself to its proper height during stacking. We'll for sure be keeping a close eye on the system though once the booster rolls back to Mega Bay 1 for any repairs or modifications. Hopefully none. On the ground, we've seen work continue on the newly designed roof for Pad 2. This will provide shielding for the tower's top module during ship recoveries, as they will be approaching from directly overhead, right in the danger zone for the ship's 3 sea-level Raptor engines during catch. Additional reinforcements have also been installed on the top of the tower, likely to support the added weight of the roof. Moving across the launch site now to Pad 1. Work continues on the orbital launch mount of sorts. Well, it's actually the flame trench first, but joke ruined. The purpose of this, as we discussed earlier, is to reconfigure the pad to support the new design of flame trench and launch mount like we see over at Pad 2 and Launch Complex 39A. It's a much cleaner design, able to withstand more thrust, and will actually carry the capability of rapid reusability down the line. Foundation work continues here though, driving sheet piles into the ground, which is required before they can actually begin digging for the flame trench itself, as they're trying to eliminate any drawbacks of not having the required equipment on site, which could cause delays and lots of stress for the workers on the pad. In the past, SpaceX has usually had hardware delivered on demand and not in advance, which is a change from the norm. While work continues over at Pad 1, we'll be observing anything new that pops up very closely. When do you think Pad 1 will come online again? And interestingly, do you think Pad 1 will first support booster catches before it can launch anything to aid Pad 2 cadence? Let us know in the comment section down below. To close things out this week, let's go ahead and bring it home to the Space Coast. Though it's more difficult to track what's actively happening here, but we still have 24/7 live stream cameras that do catch something occasionally. Work continues on Starship's launch facility at Launch Complex 39A, notably with the chopsticks being moved. Now, what we're unsure of here is if the chopsticks moved on their own or manually somehow. Last time we covered the chopsticks, there were no actuators installed, but this movement seemed pretty fluid, so it's a bit puzzling. On the same day, and actually into the night, another module for Space Launch Complex 37's first launch tower rolled by. It looks to be Module 8, and then one more followed suit just a few days later. Now, you might be asking, why are they just moving all of these and not stacking them? The simple answer here is they just need more space at Roberts Road for the time being. In our last flyover, you can see that Roberts Road is severely lacking space. With Space Launch Complex 37 covering a large amount of surface area, SpaceX can store the complete modules at the site until they are needed. As far as we're aware, no foundation work has been done yet, so it still could be a little ways off. Finally, to bring this episode to a close back at Launch Complex 39A, the Ship Quick Disconnect extension was lifted on March 7th, checking off the next major step in pad development. There's a lot of tedious work left with plumbing and all necessary connections between the tower systems and the tank farm, for example. But all of the puzzle pieces are nearly in place to support Starship's first ever flight from Florida Space Coast, which cannot happen soon enough. When do you think Booster 19 will complete a 33 engine static fire? What's next for Ship 39 given recent testing? Let us know in the comments section down below. I'm Max Evans for NSF, and thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.